Good evening, everyone. Welcome to part two, second evening of a two-part program of Systems of Vision. And I'm Kioto Aoki. I'm here with Olivia.
And I'm with Experimental Sound Studio, and we're so excited to have Kyoto here for a second night of this series that's exploring the intersection of sound and image. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what the themes behind tonight's show?
Yes. So I envision systems of vision, kind of thinking about sound as an extension of the moving image, or people who are filmmakers and using the image, photographic image, this kind of thing. And the first half was really about this enclosed semi-reciprocal systems of image and sound and image. And today we're going to hear a little bit more about some of my colleagues who are working with sound and image and sound, but also with text, I think, and voice in the body as part of this entire like diegesis. And I'm really excited to show you kind of three various works I think work very well together. And we'll be showing the works in sequence tonight. But before we get into the program, we are going to invite our guests on the screen. I have four guests this evening, three sets. And I'm going to invite Thomas Dexter from New York City. Hi. Rebecca Tsai and Yao-Yi Wang live from Taiwan.
Hello.
This morning. And then we have Maggie Wong, who is based in Chicago right now. And there are my lovely friends and colleagues, and we will join together again after the program to kind of discuss their presentations for this evening. But it's all kind of live performance based, performative work. So we hope you enjoy, and we'll see you guys after.
各位长官，各位同志，大家好。强化军中伦理，我们各个军人跟整个军队要能克敌制胜，最重要的必须有3个信心和1种能耐。哪3种信心呢？就是无论哪一个军人，对于上官一定要真诚信仰，绝对服从；对于部下一定要十分信任，使他能负责专行，建立功业。还有对于我们自己一定要坚确自信。
某次可以1200分的才能告诉最终书的是2把线。我的宣布坚决，关键是为了保护你们。
We confronted untrustworthy Chinese technology and telecom providers. We convinced many countries, and I did this myself for the most part, because we think it's an unsafe security risk. It's a big security risk.
万岁！万岁！万万岁！万万！
我以来北京没有通过一律的角逐奥斯卡的最佳剧本奖。如果可以的话，我有3个建议。第一，《纽约时报》他应该知道，他发表类似的报道只会多一个《纽约时报》在做 fake news 的这样的一个证据。第二，如果很担心这个苹果手机被窃听的话，可以改用华为手机。第三，如果还觉得不放心，为了绝对的安全起见，可以停止使用任何现代通讯设备，断绝与外界的所有联系。
If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear.
我的宣布建议，为的是为了保护你们，你们千万不要听信别人的谣言，有点疑惑，有点恐慌。对于守法的百姓，请不小讲他们。你们
I never knew much about my father as a child. As I grew older, I never really saw him behind his laundryman mask, behind the chink, that stereotypic, docile, quiet, courteous little Chinaman, deferring obediently to Buckwheat, the white man.
Your children are not your
And I never
children.
understood how a man could put up with the daily humiliations from the obnoxious white customers, or the deadliness of the
They are
12-hour
the
grind.
sons and daughters
I
of
loved him,
Wang
as son to father,
for itself.
child to God, as much as I held him in contempt, as brother to brother, man to
They
man.
come through you,
But I really didn't
but
know
not
him,
from me.
or that he really didn't belong in a laundry in Hollywood, USA. That when he worked, he
And
dreamed,
though they are with
a world
you,
shaped by painting, poetry,
they belong not to
scholarly
you.
essays, all the while transcending and resisting Buckwheat.
You may give them your love, but not your thoughts. Here can 12-part platform and program. Asian people in America have been oppressed continually by greedy, traitorous gangsters of our own communities and by the wider racist, exploitative American society. We have been bombarded by the media and newspapers, TV, radio, and schools with false ideas about how we should accept our position in this society. They've tried to brainwash us and have even coerced us into overseas and fighting against our own people in Southeast Asia. Americans have been fighting back against the oppression of this country ever since the first posted the bitterness of America's racist exploitation. The long and heroic history of the Asian American struggle inspired and strengthened us, and our purpose no longer can endure these oppressive conditions. We cannot let our ancestors' struggle go down in vain. We know who our real enemies and friends, and we have found new strength that we are joining our sisters and brothers within this country and around the world to fight for freedom and justice against the rulers of this country. We have tried the peaceful means of petition, carrots, voting, and even demonstrations. But our situation remains the same. We are not free. To improve the living conditions of our people and are preparing to defend our communities against repression and the revolutionary armed war against the gangsters, businessmen, politicians, and police. When a government oppresses the people and no longer serves the needs of the people, we have the right to abolish and create a new one. We are working for a world of peace where the needs of the people come first, which is without this class distinctions, and is the basis upon the love and unity of all peoples. The following 12 points are what we are fighting for. We want self-determination for Asian Americans. We want self-determination for all Asians. We want liberation of all third world peoples and other oppressed peoples. We want an end to male chauvinism and sexual exploitation. We want community control of our institutions and land. We want an education which exposes the true history of Western imperialism in Asia and around the world, which teaches us the hardships and struggles of our ancestors in this land, which reveals the true decadent, exploitative nature of American society. We want decent housing and health and childcare. We want freedom for all political prisoners and all Asians. We want an end to the American military. We want an end to racism. We want an end to the geographic boundaries of America. We want a socialist society. Is a society where one man, in order to survive, must exploit his fellow man. We want a society that works for the fulfillment of human needs. We want decent housing, health, childcare, employment, sanitation, and old age care. We want a society where no man or woman will die due to lack of food, medical care, or housing, where each gives according to his abilities and takes according to his need.
And that is the end of today's program. We want to thank all the viewers, and we're going to re-invite all the artists actually. So here we are back on screen. Right here, Thomas is here with us, Rebecca and Yao. And Maggie, it seems that her camera's having a little bit of trouble. Here, Thomas is here with us, Rebecca and Yao. And Maggie, it seems that her camera's having a little bit of trouble. Oh, and she's gone. Okay. Lovely. I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. Anybody hear that? Ah, okay. Right. Well, thank you guys for sharing your work. And I just would like you guys to do a little introduction of yourself and then the piece you presented today. And also because this program is about these sonic landscapes. I think tonight specifically too, it was about these sonic landscapes that were heightened by the visual image, or perhaps vice versa, where the visual image landscape is heightened by these sonic landscapes. And I'm also thinking about kind of the apparatus and the mechanisms of the body that's grounded in physicality, whether that be physicality of the machine or the human body or the voice. And then I'm also thinking about kind of placement, misplacement, displacement. So if you could also kind of talk about those things, any of those things in your introduction, that would be great. Maybe we'll start with Thomas in the order of the show. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure my performance was necessarily as high-minded as the way you presented it, but I appreciate that. So this is sort of an expanded cinema slideshow / slideshow. The way that I tend to work, I use often use systems in composition. This is, just a product of the way that I learned and, the musicians and artists that I was interested in when I was a bit younger. So I think the best way to talk about it is to talk about the system that I'm using, to generate the imagery and the sound. Part of using systems is I work in commercial film, television, and advertising, and I find like a lot of times the decisions that you make in sort of the commercial world are really like unfortunate and sort of odious to make. So I like having a system to sort of interact with, to make some of the decisions, to make some of the decision making more improvisational, and trying to take some of what I know about improvisation and bring that into filmmaking. So I'm just going to turn the camera around a little bit so you can see this big mess. Okay, so we started with some slides. Okay, I'm seeing myself here. I've been buying slides off eBay because I'm interested in seeing some different kinds of images that aren't of me and don't have to do with the world right now. So I composed a sequence of slides. I started thinking about how it'd be interesting to pair them with sound and use some of the tools I've developed in the past, which are basically ways of taking the apparatus of cinema and then sort of exaggerating it or pulling it out of like where like you were talking about displacement earlier, right? So sort of displacing the apparatus of cinema and recombining it in different ways, right? So I have a slide projector. Never worked with one before. I built these mechanical shutters to create the effect of flicker rather than sort of in the old, the traditional avant-garde way of printing, flicker onto the film. I'm using a mechanism to create flicker. All of the sound in my piece was created with a photocell. I don't know if you can see it that well. So it's translating light into sound, not doing anything like, particularly elaborate. It's sort of more like creating like kind of a crude drum machine or a low frequency oscillator. And then that signal is going through a bunch of different really cheap stomp boxes. And this is really an homage to Bruce McClure, an artist I really admire and know. I think he's sort of like the Mozart of stomp boxes and projectors. So I got that from him. And I should also say Gil Arno from New York is an artist I admire who creates slideshows using Flickr, which, Ken Jacobs did this as well. Anyway, I also have a screen. I don't know if you can see it here. I'll hold it up. It's a piece of plexiglass that was laser etched into a grid. I have some paper behind it. That's what I was projecting onto. And then I was capturing that on my iPhone. And one thing I was thinking about in terms of your keywords was this idea, I can't remember the theorist, but it's about the passage of the image, where you are working in a way that is sort of where the distinctions between analog and digital, film, video, live, pre-recorded are blurred or made indistinct. So you're not sure, where the image is derived from necessarily. Kyoto.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lovely setup. And I've known Thomas as, this filmmaker slash, live, as you said, expanded cinema artist. And I think part of the beauty of the kind of work that you are doing is it is this embodied system, and you're also part of it, which we didn't get to experience today, but in the live space, like we see you actually behind the projector, or between kind of the projector and the screen. Sometimes you're drawing right on leader and things like that. So you're and I know that you were controlling the speed of your shutters this time. So yeah, and I know that you wanted to kind of find a new space to incorporate these found images and found footage. Found images is still photographic slides, and so I think, you know, at least program-wise, like it was a nice kind of entry to take us with these found images that are lost, but you're giving them a new space. You know, and within this new analog, new old cycle of being. And sorry, I just muted you. Yes.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's useful to think about it as visual music. There wasn't, you know, it was put together very intuitively, and the decisions I were making were musical decisions more than sort of conceptual decisions. Although I was thinking that it was interesting to try to sort of negotiate different shutter speeds between the shutters I'm using, the iPhone I'm using to capture the image, and then the bottleneck through sort of the apparatus of streaming. I was interested. I was interested to see what that turned into.
Yeah, and I think
throw something at it that it maybe, you know, couldn't completely handle, because I think like we're all dealing with. In some respects, we're all dealing with sort of a kind of you know, even in something as, you know, as like resolution, you know, we're all sort of encoding a sort of like a remainder or a loss into what we're doing.
And I think in that this importance of, I don't know, I mean, I'm just gonna say one thing, like I think that this spirit of improvisation is really important in all of this, and especially tying it to music. And Maggie's piece also too embodies the spirit of improvisation. I think that not a lot of people understand this part of these kind of performative works. I've already had like some viewers ask about Thomas, like, oh, it seems so kind of polished and complete. You know, in the same way that perhaps like Rebecca and Yao's pieces, which is a full edited piece, but that this improvisational nature really is.
Also, I made it out of like trash. Like I like, you know, my you know, someone's trash, my treasure. Like, you know, projectors that I got for free, you know, cheapest stomp boxes you can possibly buy. I mean, that's important to me also, is trying to like create something that feels a bit elevated, but then you can also look at like the, you know, ramshackle, like ridiculous way that I did it. Okay.
Yeah. Are there any questions from the audience members, Olivia or Thomas?
We did get one for Thomas, wondering what the relationship is between the sites that you chose.
The sites, in terms of?
Or the images that were, the found images that you used.
I think there's a little bit of story in the images, but I didn't want to give it away. So I was interested in being sort of just on the boundary of being legible. But I don't know. I have a pile of hundreds of slides, and I think I just picked the ones where I felt like there was something missing or something slightly wrong with the image, or you know, there was just, you know, it was intuitive, yeah, for the most part. I also wanted slides that were, you know, where there was a lot of light passing through, so I could, you know, use the light to, you know, generate the sound. But yes, these were the weirdest slides. the ones that felt like mistakes. But also, you know, intermixed with a lot of like banality, like sunsets and mountainscapes. I'm still dealing with all these slides. I'm not really sure, you know, what comes next with these. They might just be for my own amusement. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca and Yao next.
Go first.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think most of our works are focused on the research of the historical events and see how it shaped the present society. So, and this piece is particularly about the Taiwan during the 1940s to 1990s. We also called it the White Terror period, that all the people are being monitored by the government, or you can say dictatorship, by using the martial law. So we built this installation. We utilized a rotating projector to project like two characters inside this apparatus, and two characters are all played by the same actor, and one character is always running away, and the other one is always chasing behind. So, and no matter who is running and who is chasing, they all under the searching by the spotlight, which is we think is a metaphor for the state apparatus. And under this situation, there is no way to hide. So this is about the installation, and Rebecca can talk about the performance.
So like Yao has mentioned, like the piece is about the past, but also about the present. So when Yao's image shows up in the projection, and he is remind the audience like he is the characters, and he's someone from the past, but we also want to bring this piece to the current. So we're talking about what does that mean, like when we showing in the whole sets of the video installation as the real person, and we think like my present is meaning the artist himself or herself. And then so when I started like pasting the mirror on my face, is kind of a behavior or action of resist to the mechanism or resist to the state apparatus, like Yao said. So, and then I follow the rotating device, like looks like I'm chasing it, or like it's also chasing me. So like even like at the current, I show my resistance to the dictatorship or the state apparatus, that I still can. There's still something that I can't like completely resist it. So I think that's what we're trying to convey in this piece. And then also like as we are filmmaker, like Yao shows up in the end at the end, and like doing this like is like the film sets. It's also reminding the audience like it's not like the real like white tarot things, but we just want to like remind this kind of chasing feeling still going on. Yeah.
Are there any questions from Olivia for them?
Not right now. There's we did get a question in, and I don't know if this was specifically for Thomas or maybe for everyone, about who are your improvisational influences. But that may have been coming in towards the end of Thomas's.
Well, I studied with Milford Graves,
Oh wow.
um, as did many people who. I went to Bennington College, and he was a real fixture there. So he had an influence on, like, everyone who was, taking music or composition classes, or or really anything, science, sociology. He was like stable there. So it'd be Milford Graves. The saxophonist Charles Gale was also teaching at that time. He's someone that he had a really expanded view of improvisation. He liked to, improvise, improvise designs for new types of buildings or airplanes or cars or cities on the dry erase board when he wasn't teaching us about, chord progressions, things like that. And then, like I said, someone like, Bruce McClure, who, took things that Tony Conrad was doing and other people of the avant-garde at that time, and then injected like the fun and high volume of rock and roll. So that's someone, also Jimi Hendrix.
And I just got clarification come through that this is a question for everyone. The idea of improvising between the visual and the sound. And so Rebecca and Yao-Yi, I would be interested to know, thinking about the visual elements and the sound elements, what is your process of putting those together, and how much do you map out before you go into the studio for filming, sort of the more complete version of what we saw?
So it's we built that. I don't know if everyone can tell. It's actually the round screen in the space, and then we do the film shooting first, and then it's actually not that much about improvising, because we as a filmmaker, we have to plan a lot of things to make things work out, and so we have to think about like shooting to make the image like keep moving all the time, so we can project in the round device all the time as well. So that's our first steps, and then we install the round screen, and then we project, and then we talk about how can me as a performer showing up in the device. If I have to say about improvising influence, I would say probably Maya Deren as a performer, because she talked about how the amateurs, because we are actually an amateur for the performers, because we are not like we are not used to get used to in front of the camera. We're the person behind the camera. So she mentioned something about like when amateurs can do is to against the professional filmmakers is you have your body, and then how your body can interact with the camera. So we thought of putting the camera on the projector itself to make the camera rotating as well. And then my body as an artist to resist this machine. I follow the machine to move, and then sort of to create that feeling like we don't know who is chasing who, like the layering the image of Yao's projection, like someone is haunting another person, but it's actually the same person. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Such a setup. Thank you.
Yeah. I wish I could see the actual installation.
Yeah.
But you do get this. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. It's actually the video installation show for another like human rights exhibition that's going to up next week in Taiwan. So
welcome to come to Taiwan.
We'll see you guys next week. I think in that you do feel this buildup and this tension of like being seen or being hunted or not wanting to be seen, or trying to see who's trying to watch you in the beginning, and then as non-Chinese speaker, kind of my first cue in that piece is when I hear Trump's voice, and it takes us out of your historical context, I think, that you guys originated from, but that we understand the similar through line, and that kind of places us in this particular moment. And then after that, I hear or heard the cue, just fake news, and within the announcer, and I don't know what else you're saying, but I understand. Oh, this is the connection, and it's this feeling of kind of tension that I think that was beautifully conveyed. And it's a funny thing that you said that Yao's kind of slate is meant as a cue for us to snap out of it, but knowing that you can't quite do that, or not quite there yet, but we are, I think, all trying to resist these forces, and I think that then leads us to Maggie's piece.
We have one more question.
Oh yeah.
For Rebecca and Yao that just came through. How does sound work for you as providing context, socio-political context, for your image while the image is being more abstract?
Okay, so when doing this piece, I was in the dilemma that should I put on the subtitle to get more background information for this sound piece, but then I would just think, okay, just like maybe it should just be create some kind of atmospheres. We don't need to know too much specific information about it. Even I using a lot of Mandarin broadcast of speech. Even for me as a Mandarin speaker, I don't even know what they are saying if I don't have the subtitle, because the accent is too difficult to me. And especially for the one opera, the Peking opera I use, it's impossible for me to know the context before, if I don't have the subtitle about it. But I think it gives me some sort of flavor, even I don't know what the story is about. And because when talking about the traditional opera, it all with the most of them with one purpose, that teach you how to be the nice or honest people from the old traditional discipline. So I think that's what I want to convey in this piece, is that we are living in the system that the system want to give us the discipline, that what we should be, what kind of person we should be. Maybe we are monitored by this system as well. Like so this opera for me is like, for example, like if you go to like the movie Mulan, even you don't know, you never you know what kind of movie it will be, even you haven't seen it before, that you will know what it will be. They will just like teach you what is good and what is bad. I think all this is information for me is the same kind of meaning, that we don't need to know the context specifically, like just want to create a kind of atmosphere.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, Maggie, would you like to explain and share with us? Okay, I'm not here. Oh, there we go.
Here we
Yes.
go. Hi, everyone. So improv is a funny thing to talk about, because the piece that I shared with you all involved visuals of this situation, but the camera decided to not play along. A little bit of
Maggie, I think even your mic is a little bit, it's hard to hear you. Just connection, not because of the mic.
yeah.
It's a little glitchy.
All right.
Yes.
So how is that better? Excellent. Yeah, so it was just explaining part of the improvisational aspect, unintentional improvisational aspect of the piece was that the camera went out right before. So there was this element of using this contact mic onto my throat and sort of across. You probably heard like a little bit of rustling and internal organs, maybe a little bit, and that was just through my body. Thinking a lot about becoming an image. And thinking through this sort of long-winded process that I've been having with a friend of mine, Isaac Vasquez, along the lines of a question of sort of like what is an image, and what's the sort of like slipperiness of identity as we sort of like tease through our family archives. So what I shared with you all was text from this piece here. Its roots an Asian American reader. It was the first Asian American reader for Asian American Studies at UCLA. The Asian American Studies Center was established in 1969. This came out in 1971, the same year as this publication here, which is comprises the images in the first part of the film portion of it. Me and Isaac have been in sort of conversation since the springtime about. It's always been very remote, and I guess just to speak to continue to speak to the sort of improvisational aspects of it. I was thinking through how in many ways I think I do like plan, but a part of the process for making any type of work for me is that it is conversational. It's like I can't get away from the fact that I work very collaboratively, and so there's always this like instinctual room for like someone to take the question or sort of like what I'm putting out and adding on top of it, and it makes for a very messy process, but I find it to be the most generative and like a process that sort of like instigates futurity because it's always ongoing and it's always already. Ben, I think that is similar. That sort of collaborative nature is similar to the way that I use materials too. In this way that it's improvisation. It's in a certain sense it's systems based. In a certain sense, it's a lot of sort of like processes that take a lot of steps. I mainly come to making work through the perspective of sculpture and thinking about sort of like viewing in the round the sort of like spatial qualities of any work and the sort of like social sculpture that happens in and around a work. So I might work in sound and image, but be thinking about sort of the body's interaction in between so that it becomes sort of like a sculpture or sort of way of thinking through a piece through sculptural terms. And so like these kind of sort of processes of mold making also that I do are very much so like systems, but with a lot of material conversation of like, this works, and then that spilled over and flopped over, and then we like slop it on back to this other part of the piece, and kind of are just sort of like in this kind of like long-winded conversation with materials. But how I sort of got into this project, or I think I can share Kyoto, like how you invited me to be a part of this because of some work that I was doing with records and mold making and making sort of compositions out of records through sort of a serialized kind of way of taking molds of various parts of records and splicing them together. And I think in many ways, like I'm just operating off of this moment of like I can't pry myself out of this moment of being hyper politicized and thinking about sort of what it's like to recompose like my family's archives that is like highly influential in terms of thinking about sort of identitarian politics and specifically to like forms of resistance. So thinking about the text that I read to you all, very muffled, like it's this this text. Irokun was a Marxist-Leninist organization that my parents were a part of. It's how they met. My father, Eddie Wong. My father is Eddie Wong and my mother is Anna Whittington. Who knows how like a prominent sort of Asian American activist leader married a Southern white woman, but that's a part of my ongoing research and fascination. But it's just, this is like, it's so fascinating to me, like embodying this language that feels on one hand, like so relevant. Like it's like the points, it's the demands, it's the like we want an end to racism. Like, yeah, we wanted it then, we want it now. Like we always want it. And these sort of like, I don't know, also like the form that gets repeated too. So like the 12-point platform and program is coming off of very specifically taking the form from the Black Panthers, like 10-point program and sort of, it was this time of sort of coalition building and militancy. And I find it so interesting the way that, the way that on one hand things change and things don't change, but more so like how like loops and these sort of eternal returns kind of happen through generations, through rhetoric, and through form too. Like when I was watching Yao and Rebecca's piece, I was thinking a lot about this idea of like loops and repetition, which is also in yours piece too, Thomas, and thinking about sort of like the efforts, those kinds of efforts being an effort also of like non-origin, but of like a cursing over and through and like into like into a sense of futurity in a certain sense, and a kind of odd folding of temporality of being like both highly present and suspended within these like sort of like returns, and thinking about their extensions, how they can go on and on and on.
Yeah, and I think in that way we become like you guys also are like becoming images in that way, like an image of this folding, which is now and not now, and present and not present. And that I think that it will be used, in like 30 years in the same way that like Thomas is using the found images, or Rebecca and Yao are referencing like a moment in the past that it's of the moment, and that we end up, and I'm just thinking about how like we end up all becoming this image like in this particular moment in time, and understanding the complexities of this like time, not linear, non-linear, kind of cyclical, rhythmic relationships.
Yeah, and then like I think that's just so fascinating in terms of a question about visibility and representation too, right? That comes into the fold of art discourse and like art histories too, right? And also thinking about sort of like the contemporary moment too, of like who is represented, how are they represented, like, and a conversation about sort of like equity and diversity. But I think that it's also really interesting to think about the image on a sort of more metaphysical level at the same time, and a sort of like the becomingness of it, because that's the frustration that me and Isaac have with these things that we love too, is that like there's total gaps. Like we don't, it's like all about misidentification when we're looking through this. Like I am not this woman, I am not these women, but they're all weirdly my mothers, is like the feeling. Yeah, that's my whatever.
Well, thank you. Are there any questions, Olivia?
Not yet. But they're a little behind us. So.
Oh, right. But okay, then I think we will close it here. And I want to thank all of you guys for being a part of this program. It's an honor and to be able to work with you all and see your work. And I also enjoy how it all comes together, in creating this new space and continuous, I think, space and conversation. And hopefully, one day we're virtually sharing this with everyone now, but hopefully one day we can all convene physically at ESS back in Chicago. And have a different kind of iteration of this program. So I want to thank it, and thank you, Olivia and ESS again for having us. This is the this is the end of the Systems of Vision program, but the next time we will be here is next month, actually, November 13th. The next time we'll return. I'm here representing Asian Improv Arts Midwest, but also myself now as taiko performer, as a musical improviser. So I will be presenting a solo set on taiko, and then a duo with myself and my father, Tatsu, to kind of present and contextualize where my musical tradition kind of comes from. And then I'll be playing with the Kioto Aoki's reduction trio, which is myself and my father on bass, and then Jamie Kempers on cello, to kind of do a contemporary presentation of that. So if you're interested in this kind of new Japanese American experimental creative music, hopefully we'll see you next month.
Thank you, Kioto. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day. Thanks for joining us.